Hello, hello, hello. Good evening, dear friends, dear viewers, and dear members of the Truth TV. You are welcome to the leadership platform on Truth TV. My name is Samuel Ayim, and I'm your regular host on this forum. In the past few weeks, we have started discussing leadership lessons from key Bible personalities. The first one we looked at was Adam, the leader who failed to lead. And we learned the consequences that happen when leaders fail to lead. Last week, we looked at Nehemiah, the leader without a title. And we learned from the life of Nehemiah that you don't have to have a position or a title to lead. And there may be people who have title and position who are not leading. You can make a difference. You can change without having a title. This week, we will continue with the lessons from key Bible personalities. And what we are going to discuss this week and next week is leadership lessons from the life of David. David, the king of Israel. We're going to look at some lessons. There are so many lessons in the life of David. This week, we are going to focus on one. And the lesson we are going to focus on from the life of David is character, the heart of leadership. The heart of leadership. What should be the condition of heart of the leader? When we begin to look for a leader, what should we look for? What are the qualities we should look for? What is important? Stay with us as we take a short break, and when we come back, we would look at this question into a bit more detail and draw some lessons from King David. Welcome back to the leadership platform on Truth TV. And my name is Samuel Ayim. As I said in the introduction, we are looking at some lessons from the life of David, the king of Israel. And today, we are looking at the heart of leadership. What is the heart, the condition of heart of a leader? What qualities should we be looking at in a leader? King David was indeed a great leader. Men were willing to follow him even before he became a king. In 1 Chronicles chapter 11, verse 1 to 3, we read about how the people of Israel went to King David and told him when he was not even a king, he was the one leading them. People followed him even when he was on the run, running away and hiding in the deserts when Saul was chasing after him. People were following him. He is one of the few people that God referred him as the man of my own heart. And this is one of the highest praise anyone can get. You know, not only in the Bible, but anywhere where your leader, your boss, not only that, but God says you are a man of his heart. That is who David was. Now, as I said, there are so many lessons, and Psalm 78, verse 70 to 72, summarizes the leadership lessons we can learn from David. Psalm 78, from verses 70 to 72. It reads, "He chose David his servant, and took him from the sheep pens. From tending the sheep, he brought him to be the shepherd of his people, Jacob, of Israel, his inheritance. And David shepherded them with integrity of heart. With skillful hands, he led them." Now, two critical elements are identified in this passage: the integrity of heart and the skillfulness of hand. But we see that, where David was taken from the sheep pen and made a king. we find a number of lessons we can learn. We can just mention them and we'll draw on what we're going to learn today. We see that God is the source of true leadership. He's the one who called David, took him from the sheep pen, and made him a king. Number two, true leaders often come from unexpected places. I mean, David from the sheep pen. True leaders are not announced at their birth all the time. Number three, the main purpose of leadership is service, shepherding. He shepherded God's people and led them. Number four, integrity is the foundation of true leadership. As he said, he led with integrity. And number five, leadership is a skill that must be learned. So even at the beginning, just one passage about David, we can see so many lessons, and we can spend hours diagnosing and studying about each of those lessons. But today, we're going to focus on some other aspects of David's life. We're going to look at the necessary qualities for selecting a leader. And we are looking at how David was selected. And that will lead us to the topic that we are discussing, the heart of leadership. We will look at this focusing mainly from 1 Samuel chapter 16, verse 1 to 13. I'll read just a few verses, reading from verse 1. Now the Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul, seeing I have rejected him from reigning over Israel? Fill your horn with oil, go. I am sending you to Jesse the Bethlehemite, for I have provided myself a king among his sons." And Samuel said, "How can I go? If Saul hears it, he will kill me." But the Lord said, "Take a heifer with you and say, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Then invite Jesse to the sacrifice, and I will show you what you shall do. You shall anoint for me the one I name to you." So Samuel did what the Lord said and went to Bethlehem. And the elders of the town trembled at his coming and said, "Do you come peaceably?" And he said, "Peaceably, I have come to sacrifice to the Lord. Sanctify yourselves and come with me to the sacrifice." Then he consecrated Jesse and his sons and invited them to the sacrifice. So it was when they came that he looked at Eliab and said, "Surely the Lord's anointed is before me." But the Lord said to Samuel, "Do not look at his appearance or his physical stature, because I have refused him. For the Lord does not see as man sees, for man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart." So Jesse called Abinadab and made him pass before Samuel. And he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Then Jesse made Shammah pass by, and he said, "Neither has the Lord chosen this one." Thus Jesse made 7 of his sons pass before Samuel, and Samuel said to Jesse, "The Lord has not chosen this one." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Are all the young men here?" Then he said, "There remains yet the youngest, and there he is keeping the sheep." And Samuel said to Jesse, "Send and bring him, for we will not sit down till he comes here." So he sent and brought him in. Now he was ruddy and with bright eyes and good looking. And the Lord said, "Arise, anoint him, for this is the one." Then Samuel took the horn of oil, anointed him in the midst of his brothers, and the Spirit of the Lord came upon David from the day forward. So Samuel arose and went to Ramah. Now this is a very interesting story about how David was selected as a king of Israel. It was at a time that Saul had been rejected by God. And Samuel was agonizing because the people of Israel were looking for somebody to lead them. Does it happen in your organization, in a country, in a community, that we are looking for a leader? That a person who leads us is frustrating us? The person has lost the honor. He has lost the leadership. He's become like Adam, refused to lead, and we are looking for others. It can be a national elections that we are looking to appoint a president, or it can be even church leadership, where you're looking for elders, or you're looking for one form of church leader or the other, where people have opportunity to choose. What do we look for in this person? Now, a lot of the time, people come into leadership position from different backgrounds. But God positions people differently for leadership, as we can see. I mean, in the life of Moses, Moses was positioned in the king's palace. But that was not the life of David. David had a different positioning. He was a shepherd. There was very little in terms of his family background. It was not visible. The circumstances of the family would not lead anybody to, think about the Jesse family to look for a king from that family. Spiritually, even Samuel, who was spiritually perceptive, could not believe that the shepherd boy David could become the future king. So, like Samuel, in seeking whom God may have in mind for the leadership or spiritual position, we need to be reminded, like God reminded Samuel, that God does not look on things that men look at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And that is where our lesson is based. In looking for leaders, we need to look at the heart. But as human beings, we don't. What is in the heart of David that the Lord saw? He perceived a yielding and a contrite heart in a shepherd boy to be made the king. Different backgrounds. Joseph was prime minister of Egypt. Daniel became the first minister. All these people came from different backgrounds. What did God see in David? David's call to leadership came to him through the wise and experienced agency of Samuel, who was a priest. He was the one who chose him. Yet Samuel had to be reminded of the two important considerations, and which one of them is more important. The first consideration from God's statement are the external factors. The background, the physical attractiveness, knowledge, skill, experience. Important as they are not the most important qualification that God was looking for. And in fact, they are important, but they are not the most important qualification for the service of leadership. There is the second factor, the inside factor, the innermost factor, the character. That inward condition of the human heart is the most important qualification for leadership of all kinds, at all levels. That is why God said to Samuel, do not consider his appearance or his height. The Lord does not look at things the man looks at. Man looks at the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. So there are two critical factors, the external factors, and God says that is not sufficient for selecting a leader, and the internal factors. As you said, the external factors are appearance. background, physical attractiveness, knowledge, skill, and experience. They are very important. But what do? We make a mistake very often when we are selecting leaders to focus on those things. We focus more on the looks. And it happens, there's presidential election and they are comparing, oh, that candidate is short, that candidate is not handsome, Obama is more handsome than Donald Trump or whatever. You know, and we look at it that way. Oh, he's a beautiful young man, very attractive, six packs and all that. Those are the physical things we look at for. The way he dresses. I mean, that guy dresses so nicely, decently, impeccable. You know, we make a mistake and look at the physical attractiveness, the cars they drive, you know, where they live, where they come from. We also make a mistake of picking from the past. Sometimes we are looking at, you know, the past of the person, or that we are looking at the history of the people. And in this particular situation, when Samuel, who also selected Saul, when he went to select Saul, the record shows that, you know, he looked at Saul and Samuel caught sight of Saul. The Lord said to him, "This is the man I spoke to you." And the Bible says that Saul was an impressive young man without equal among Israel. In fact, he was a head taller than any other person in Israel. You know, so that history was in the mind of Saul. So when he saw Jesse's first son come, tall, handsome, he says, wow, this man looks just like Saul. He's the one God is going to choose. God says, no, that's not it. Don't look at things that way. And that's sometimes what we do. Number 3 mistakes that we make is we choose from what we call the pecking order, the seniority, hierarchy. And there are some political parties, you can never become a presidential candidate if you haven't grown and become old into 70s and 80s. And that's why we are seeing a lot of old presidents around. If you're young, they ask you to beat your time. In organizations, it happens. We're looking at the seniors. How long have you been here? In the military and police and others, it is how long you have been around. That would promote you. But that does not mean, the fact that you've been around long enough does not necessarily make you a better leader than somebody who just came. So, dear leaders, we shouldn't always make the mistake of thinking that because somebody has been around for so long, that he's passed through all the rank, that necessarily he becomes a better leader. And that's a hierarchical form of leadership which is experienced especially in the public service. In most private organizations where they have good systems, you know, leadership is not necessarily based on how long you've been around. And you can become a leader just based on the qualities that are looked for. The 4th mistake that we make is opting for age and tenure, which is similar to, you know, the seniority and the pecking order. You know, age. He's the oldest person. And that's exactly what Jesse and Samuel were doing when he was asked. He started from the oldest. He brought the oldest, the next, the next, the next, the next. And that didn't work. Clearly, God was not looking at age. In today's world, which is, if you like, image politicking, you know, personal branding, where people think that personal branding is just the way you look, the way you dress, you know, where being telegenic, the way you look in the pictures, photogenic, the way they take your picture, Photoshop it, and make it nice. We focus so much on the external. Having excellent communication, the person who is just able to talk, oratory. These are considered to be the most important prerequisite to leadership success. It is extremely hard in this kind of culture to tell people that character is actually the most important. It seems like counterintuitive, to be almost foolish to say character is the heart of leadership. Even Samuel, in assessing the suitability of the sons of Jesse for the kingship, he almost repeated the same mistakes that he made when he was assessing Saul's qualification. Now, let us be clear. We are not saying that these qualities are not important. They are very important. Your background is important. Your experience is important. And yes, sometimes, the way you look, physical appearance is important. When you work in a bank, the way you dress is very important. When you're going to sell to customers, they want to see confidence. Your knowledge of the skills of the products that you're selling is very important. Experience is very important in problem solving. And David had all these. Okay, so we are not saying they are not important. David was also a winsome, charismatic personality. He was, the Bible as we read said, he was ruddy with fine appearance and handsome features. So he was nice. He was like a street graduate. He had a background, the experience as a shepherd. He went out there, he fought. So he had the experience and the skills, as a soldier. That was important also. And the Psalms also evidence impressive knowledge of the law and the reality of God, which is required at that point to be a king of Israel. So all this, we are not saying they are not important. All we are saying that these characteristics are not the most important. They are not from this lesson, we see that they are not the most important characteristics. The lesson from Samuel's experience in recruiting David as a future king of Israel under God's direction is that they are not the most important qualities. But what is the most important quality? God says the most important quality is inside. What is the man or woman you are trying to look for made up of? In one word, what is the character of the person? And that is what we would come back and look at. What is it that God saw in the young boy at that time so clearly that he says, he is a man after my own heart? We'll take a short break, and when we come back, we'll go through this character qualities of the inside person that God saw in David, and which is what we should be looking for in great leadership. Dear friend, welcome back to the leadership platform on Truth TV. I believe so far we are learning a few things. The subject we are discussing is leadership lessons from the life of King David, following our theme for this period, which is leadership lessons from key Bible personalities. So we are looking at King David, and we've said that King David's life is full of leadership lessons. But today, we are looking at the heart of leadership, which is character. And we have looked at the story of how King David was selected as a king when God asked Samuel to go to the house of Jesse and select the person he wanted to be king to succeed Saul. And Samuel was looking at some qualities, and God told him that he does not look at things the way man look at. And we have looked at some of the mistakes that we as men make when we are selecting leaders. And we are looking at what God says is the most important quality. And whether you are a Christian or you're not a Christian, this is not about, it's not about the Bible, it's not about spirituality. These are true qualities. You can crowd it in whatever form, in big business, management books, in leadership books, where they're not quoting from the Bible. But the principles that are outlined are exactly what is being taught in the business school, in the leadership schools. This is what every leader, whether political, business, religious, family, every form of leadership, whether it is sports or whatever, every form of leadership, these principles are the same and they apply. All right. So long before Saul's demise, Samuel is told by God to stop mourning for him and to go and anoint a successor, a man after God's own heart from the sons of Jesse. That's what we have looked at. So Samuel goes and he starts selecting, looking at the personalities, looking at their experience, looking at their physique, and so on and so forth. And God says, no. Look at the heart. Man looks at the surface, I look at the heart. So the heart is what we are looking at. What is the heart that God is looking at? The inner condition of the human heart is not only something that is most important to God, it is the most important qualification for leadership of all kinds, as we've said. So what should be the content of the heart? Or should we say, what is there in the heart of David that God saw at an early stage so clearly that Samuel maybe saw dimly at first when they looked at the heart of David? And this is what we're going to look at. We're going to try to go into the heart of David and look at the content of the heart of David and commend that as the key character qualities of the heart of a great leader. So the first thing we find in the heart of David is that David had a caring heart. David was not simply a hired hand who cares nothing about the shepherd, nor was he one of those self-serving and exploitative leaders or shepherds. No. I mean, unlike those leaders that were denounced in the book of Ezekiel chapter 34 verse 2 to 3, Ezekiel denounced certain leaders. He says, woe unto the shepherd of Israel who only take care of themselves. Should not shepherd take care of the flock? You eat the curds, clothe yourself with wool, and slaughter the choice animals, but you do not take care of the flock. This is what the shepherds were doing. Some of the shepherds were doing, and this was in reference to some leaders of Israel. And does it sound like something that we know, particularly those of us who are in Africa? Do we find our leaders taking care of themselves? In fact, it is that financial reward that is driving them into the political leadership. And the next thing is where they will live, get their cars, four-wheel drives, whether it is the parliamentarian or whether it is the ministerial position. That is the most important thing. They are just taking care of themselves. They are just getting big contracts and awarding it to their friends and families. As one judge has said, they create, loot, and share. That's what our leaders do to us. David was not like that. A true leader must have a heart that is caring about the people. It is the people you should lead. Leadership is not about the leader, it's about the people. So do you care about the people you lead or about yourself? Is it about your interest? Is it about your ego? Is it about your comfort? That is the most important. And not only political leaders. I have seen this in business leadership. I remember, as a member of an executive committee, when I was in corporate life in one institution, there was discussions about bonuses. And some colleagues were like, well, bonus is not supposed to be for everybody. Bonus is supposed to just be for the top 5%. We cannot give bonus to everybody. And obviously, I was resistant to this kind of idea. I understood why a whole team of people will produce the profit, and then only a few people will share the bonus. And some executives sit in the management meetings and they think only about themselves. They make decisions about their perks, their housing, their loans, their allowances, their bonuses, their travels, their children's education. They think about only themselves. And the same thing they decide and give to themselves, the people who are working themselves out for them also need the same thing. But somehow did not care. That was not David's situation. He cared about his sheep. He cared about the people. And if you go through the story of David, you will see that. Number two, David had a servant heart, a sacrificial heart. David faithfully served his father. He served the king even when the king was looking for him to kill him. He was still serving him. He served his people. He was willing to sacrifice. At a point where nobody wanted to face Goliath, he was prepared to go. He is frequently referred to in the scripture as God's servant. You can look at Psalm 78 verse 70. God's servant. Frequently, he was prepared to lay down his life for his flock, for his king. He was prepared to lay down his life for his country, for his God. Like a good shepherd who laid down their life for the sheep. That is what he was. And Jesus, who was referred to as the Son of David subsequently, he said, the Son of Man did not come to serve, but to serve and to give his life as a ransom. Leadership is about service. The highest purpose of leadership is to add value to people, is to serve others. That is what leadership is about. It's not about yourself. So it requires sacrifices. It requires that, when you look at Nelson Mandela, for example, he had to sacrifice, stay in prison for 27 years. Dr. Nkrumah and co. He was in prison when he was voted. He wanted to fight for the freedom of the people. That was what he was. He could have been comfortable with the colonial masters, but they didn't want that. Martin Luther King didn't want that. He was concerned about the people, service to the people. What are you sacrificing for your team? What are you sacrificing for your company? What are you sacrificing for your church? What are you sacrificing for your community? What service are you rendering? That heart is what David had. Number three, of the content of the heart of a leader, a true leader, which we found in David, is a courageous heart. Courage that enabled him to defend his flock from the bear and the lion and his people from the enemies. That's what he did. He was so courageous. And when Goliath came to the scene and challenged the army of Israel, everybody was afraid. Even the king, Saul, was hiding. But this kid came up, comforting the king and telling the king, "King, don't worry." Can you imagine? You have a giant standing there, and everybody was hiding. The king was hiding. And David comes and tells the king, "Don't worry, be assured, God is able. This guy is going to go down." And the king was like, "Are you kidding me?" I mean, all the military people, the commanders with title could not face him. You, this small boy, are you sure? David was brave because he knew who was backing him. If you are on the side of God, then there's nothing to fear. That is what God saw in the heart of David. Not even death. So when you are committed to a cause, when you believe in that, when you believe there is a power behind you, especially if it's a spiritual leadership, you know that it's God which is behind you. In fact, even in physical leadership, in political leadership, why is it that today even the politicians are saying the battle is the Lord's? Why are they saying so? Because they recognize that even physical authority is derived from God. God is the source of all leadership. And if he doesn't allow you, you will not go. But if you don't believe in God, then you're believing in yourself, then you'll be afraid because you are limited. But if you trust in God, whether you're a business leader, whether you're a political leader, whether you're a religious leader, whether you're a team leader or football coach, whatever leadership, if you trust in God, we need not be afraid. We need not be afraid because we know that he is the ruler of the universe. He will be able to take care of us. The Lord, David said in Psalm 27 verse 1, "The Lord is my light and my salvation. Whom shall I fear? The Lord is the stronghold of my life. Of whom shall I be afraid? This is the heart that God saw. So what is the source of your courage as a leader? Number 4, God saw in the heart of David an honest heart, an integrity of heart which enabled David to be honest with himself and with God, unlike Saul, who was deceitful. Now, when David was found to have committed an offense, he honestly said, I accept it. I have done wrong. I have done wrong. Integrity, honesty. Have you been honest? Are you telling people the truth? How honest are you with the resources that have been entrusted in you? And an accountant, and you're keeping the books, and you are cooking the books. You're calling it financial engineering. I mean, this is not on. You are a minister. You've been given a job. You go and enter into a contract and you have a deal. Today we have DCs who are giving contracts, and before you get a contract, you are paid 20%, 10%. You have to put the cash. How do you expect a contractor to do that road? Integrity seems to be lost in our leadership, especially in our political leadership, because that is where, it comes down to the fish rots from the head. If our top leaders would show integrity and be honest and stamp out corruption, it will trickle down. But when people in the ministries can see that the deals are being done at the ministerial level, they too, the small fishes, would ask for a weight to be on the paper before they push that paper. A heart of honesty God saw in David, and that is required in every great leader. Number 5, God saw in the heart of David a faithful and a loyal heart. A heart that is capable of intense and prolonged loyalty, not only to God, but even to his flock and to his friends. Jonathan was an example. David was close with Jonathan. He was also loyal to Saul, even though Saul wanted to kill him, and he was loyal to his Lord. It is very, very important. Now, sometimes, especially when you travel out and you see a lot of compatriots who are abroad, and they speak down upon their country, they speak down upon their continent. What are you doing? What is your loyalty? Where is your loyalty? I see so many people, they want to go abroad, they want to go and deliver in the UK, in the US, so that they can have their citizenship of that country. They don't want even the citizenship of their country. But who is supposed to build your country for you? David was loyal to God, to his friends, to his country. Where is your loyalty? Every true leader must be loyal to the cause for which he is appointed. Number 6, God saw in the heart of David a patient heart. The heart of a man who waits on God. The posture which David frequently assumes in the book of Psalms, rather than rush ahead, to take his own initiative as Saul did in so many occasions. David was very, very patient. He was patient. Now look at it this way. David was anointed as Israel's king when he was a boy, probably in his teens, 12 years, 13 years, whatever. But it took 30 years before he became king of Judah, which was only part of Israel, and actually 37 years before he became king of Israel, as he was promised. 37 years. Waiting that long for his rightful place is hard enough. But look at it. Within that period, the existing king Saul spent a fair portion of the time trying to kill David. This forced him to stay on the run. He was always hiding in caves, fleeing from one country to another. At least twice, David had clear opportunity to kill Saul. And considering the circumstances, he would have been considered self-defense because Saul was actually attacking him. But David didn't kill him. He knew that God was in control and he trusted him enough. This is the heart of David. He was so patient. And that's why he could say in Psalm 27 verse 14, wait for the Lord, be strong and take heart, and wait for the Lord. Wait for the Lord. Today, our young people are not prepared to wait. They want to take over the world. It's fine to be ambitious. It's fine to work hard. It's fine to look to be successful. But you have to go through the process. You have to go through the meal. You have to be patient and wait for the process, for God's time. Because if you rush, you could be ahead of yourself. So people are running through the desert, just try to make money. Patience is very important. Go through the process and God will be with you. The seventh thing that God saw in David's heart is a spiritually sensitive heart. A man who could see and sense God's presence everywhere. That's what David was. He could see God's presence. He could sense God's presence. He walked with God. And he was fully spiritually attuned to his God. Spiritually attuned to his God. Very, very important. And the next one, as our time is running out, quickly, David had a teachable and obedient heart. A man who was willing to be under authority and learn to lead by first learning. To follow. He learned to follow. And next week, we will focus a bit on that, how David learned to be a follower. Subordinate leadership. Leading from the bottom to the top. Next week, we will look at that. Again, David had a humble heart. If you are a lonely shepherd boy and you are chosen to be a king, what will you do? Will you go back to shepherding? That's exactly what David did. He was anointed, he went back and did his work. He was so humble. When he does not call up, he does not get called to be in the palace. Instead, he was serving. When he went into the palace, he went there to serve. He performed music. He was playing music on the demand of Saul, like an iPod. He just was singing anytime Saul wanted. When his dad asked him, who has been anointed a king, to make snack for his brothers, he did that. If it were you and me, no. But David was so humble. He knew that even as king, he was still just a servant of God. And dear leader, humility is very important. Who are you? David will say, who am I, sovereign Lord? And what is my family that you have brought me this far? You are who you are at the position you are because God has made you so. So be humble. Humble yourself. The last content of the heart of a great leader is the heart of faith. God saw in the heart of David faith. Throughout all his life, David showed that he had faith in God. He believed that God was in control. God had promised that he would be king. And since he wasn't king yet, that meant that Saul couldn't kill him. He believed in God. Same with Goliath. When others brought up doubt, David pointed to evidence of how God had taken care of him in the past. He trusted God. He was a man of faith. You cannot be a leader if you don't believe. You have to believe in something. You have to believe in God. You have to believe in the mission. You have to believe that the vision that has been set can be achieved. This is what David says. But I trust in you, Lord. I say, you are my God. My times are in your hands. Deliver me from the hands of my enemies, from those who pursue me. This is a man who have faith in God. This is the heart that you need. And in that condition, David was prepared to repent. He had a repentant heart. He was vulnerable. Why would God be dealing with somebody like that? Because at a point, David lied, he committed adultery, but God was still with him. Why? Because he had a good heart. And when he had even sinned, check Psalm 51, he was very open and vulnerable. So, dear leader, what we've tried to see is the heart of a true leader, the character. And that is the most important. Being a good leader doesn't mean that you will not make mistakes. No, you make mistakes. But your heart, the condition of your heart, your willingness to accept and quickly change. And to agree with David to say, I have greatly sinned what I have done. How many of our leaders confess that they make mistakes? They will tell you even in politics that, no, you don't have to apologize. But David said, I have greatly sinned. Now, Lord, I beg you, take away my guilt, take away the guilt of your servant. I have done a very foolish thing. I mean, how many leaders would confess? When they are even wrong, they don't want to accept it. So, in conclusion, all we are saying, learning from the life of David, is that character is the most important quality. And that stems from the heart. It's an inside job. So in seeking to identify, to recruit and support suitable candidates for leadership, for work, for anything, let us not ignore the importance of attractiveness, background, knowledge, skill, and experience. But above all, let us look at evidence of those even more important characteristics of the heart. A heart that is caring, a heart that is serving, self-sacrifice, a courageous heart, honest heart, faithful heart, loyalty, patience, spiritual perceptive, teachable, and obedient heart. This is what God saw in the heart of David. And he said, this is a man of my own heart. I hope we have learned something today. Follow us on our YouTube channel, ctlafrica.com. Go to our website, go to Truth TV, and look at the previous videos of Leadership Platform. And feel free to contact us anytime you want lessons on leadership. God bless you. Stay blessed.